we've been watching the crypto companies who are embattled, freezing withdrawals. Troubled lender Celsius Network has paid down $95 million of its debt to the Aave and Compound DeFi platforms, freeing up about just over $170 million locked in the platforms as collateral. Also, Voyager, which declared Chapter 11 bankruptcy last week, assured customers that its FDIC-insured USD deposits would be returned in full pending a reconciliation and fraud prevention process. Three Arrows Capital co-founder Su Zhu also breaking his silence on Twitter, saying his attempt to work with liquidators was met with baiting. I'm not sure what he means by that. Emily had a look at the letter, and it could be just that creditors are just looking for information.
Well, I think creditors are actually looking for him specifically. Him and his co-founder are actually nowhere to be found. There's just some photos of the Singapore office, just basically door locked, mail outside the front. Now, they are claiming that they are under threats of physical violence. This is not terribly surprising, given that there are some very angry people that want their money back. But also, it just raises yet another question about crypto, which is supposedly this transparent industry. And now, not only is all this money missing, the founders themselves are missing. So there's just a lot of questions and a lot of opacity here that is deeply troubling.
Yeah, apparently in Zoom meetings, they're turning off the camera so you can't see them. Lawyers for creditors have gone to their Singapore office. They're not to be found. And our next guest has advice for investors trying to get their money out of crypto platforms that have frozen withdrawals. Joining us now is Joshua Browder. He's the CEO of legal services chatbot DoNotPay. Hi, Joshua. Thanks for joining us. So as we hear about Voyager filing for bankruptcy days after freezing withdrawals, and we hear about Three Arrows Capital, Celsius, you actually have some advice for retail investors. You tweeted out that if you have under $10,000 to $25,000 with Celsius or any other crypto exchange that has frozen your funds, here is a step-by-step guide on how to get your money back ahead of everyone else using the loss. And perhaps you could walk us through what you're saying here.
So my company DoNotPay helps automate something called small claims court, which is this amazing court in America where you can sue for under $10,000. And lawyers are banned in this court, and the judges are very sympathetic to consumers. I should say, though, that it's particularly good at targeting US-based companies like Celsius. The Three Arrows Capital guys, or things like Luna, which are based outside of the US, it's not so good at targeting because the courts can't reach them. And then a consumer can just file this claim, and then in about a month or two, they can get a judgment. And that judgment puts them ahead of all other consumers who are considered something called unsecured creditors. And so DoNotPay has been doing this for a while, suing companies like Comcast and Equifax. And now we've decided to help people get crypto justice by suing Celsius. We currently have over 1,700 cases, and it's really exciting because it gives the little guy power to take action rather than just wait and read the news.
It's interesting, but in your tweet, you also laid out that in the terms of service with Celsius in particular, they say that they can freeze withdrawals.
So it's interesting. In all these big companies' terms of service, they say you can't sue us. But there's a loophole in Section 27C of Celsius's terms of service saying that you can sue in small claims court. So that legal issue is dealt with. And then to your point about freezing withdrawals versus not, there are certain fraud laws where, in our opinion, they didn't disclose the risks. So they put things on their website like one-day liquidity, your money is safe. And if you're making those sorts of guarantees and you can't live up to them, that violates a lot of Federal Trade Commission guidelines, and it's likely that small claims court judges will side with consumers. I should mention, though, that we believe that Celsius isn't actually going to show up to a lot of these cases. There's over 1,000 pending cases across the country in small towns, and it's often the case where these corporations feel like it's more expensive to actually hire a lawyer to defend themselves than it is to just get a default judgment against them. So it's interesting to see how it all plays out, but I don't think the terms of service protects Celsius that much.
So Joshua, this of course is a very brilliant strategy, particularly for the small investor. How did you get involved with Celsius to begin with? I mean, obviously your bot is something that those with traffic tickets may be familiar with, but how did you get involved with it? And is this something that you were doing, following closely even before?
So I'm a computer scientist. I like to build legal bots that automate processes and get people justice. But unfortunately, a lot of people assume I'm a lawyer. So whenever there's a big scandal, a huge number of people write to me. And in the case of Celsius, it was really sad. People were writing to me saying, I've got my life savings stuck in this. What can I do? And it really made me rally the DoNotPay team around this cause, because it's so sad that people trusted this company, put their life savings and worked hard for it, only to have these withdrawals frozen. In Celsius's case, they have some of the money, as you alluded to earlier. They just don't have all of the money. So I think it's really helpful to get the smallest investors at the front of the line to get paid back.
Can you just break down a little further what you are alleging that Celsius did that was actually illegal? So first you're saying there's like the false or the misleading claims on their website. What are some of the other things that you are pointing to that you see as evidence of wrongdoing that could be compensated in court?
So it's mainly around the disclosures. I like to say if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And this, like, your money is safe, you can get it back quickly, that sort of thing. And then also around the timing of the withdrawals, because there are a lot of consumers who placed withdrawals before Celsius froze the withdrawals and still had their pending withdrawals cancelled. So a lot of stuff around the notice periods and things like that, which our software is looking into.
And just a tactical question. I've seen this before. You've talked about this likelihood of Celsius not showing up. Does it really make sense to keep saying that, though? Because I feel like you're just kind of taunting them and getting them to actually show up in the courts.
Well, so Celsius has bigger problems at the moment. They're on the verge of bankruptcy. They have class action lawsuits, criminal investigations. And so if a consumer sues for $5,000 in a rural Colorado town in their local small claims court, I still think it's fair to say that they're not going to show up. There's a lot of media out there about Celsius, so hopefully they're not watching this. But if they are, I think it still is more expensive for them to come than it is for
Alex
them
Shinsky does
to
watch this show. Can rest assured.
Okay, forget what I said that then.
So any other companies you're looking at?
So we were looking at Voyager. That's a great example, actually automating the Canadian small claims court process. The problem is that all of this stops once bankruptcy is declared, but we have several other US companies that we're working on that we can announce soon.